Ladies and gentlemen, a season that brought us so much chaos now gives way to a season that brings much uncertainty. But there's one thing that we can count on, that when we do go racing in just 2 weeks' time, we will hear these most famous words. Drivers, start your engines! You are now listening to the fastest show on iSports Radio. My name is Daryl Kinsey Jr., and I'm welcoming you to take the very first lap in the 2021 season for this edition of the Extra Mile. Well, usually I would say the winter of our racing discontent is over, but unfortunately I'm pretty sure it's still going on because we're all still stuck in the house, unfortunately. Brighter days ahead on that. But hey, we do have some racing coming up. We do have some sort of event going on that they decided to put on for the Rolex 24 Roar before the 24 test. We'll get into that. But of course, next week, Rolex 24, can't wait. And then after that, Daytona 500. Really can't wait for that. Then we roll into IndyCar and Formula One. And just like that, the racing season is back going once again. And tonight, we're going to preview that season for you. And here to help me with that, of course, are my regular co-hosts, Christopher Lehman and Michael Ward. And joining us on the program as our guest, you have heard him call about everything from tennis to, of course, the Indianapolis 500. Good buddy of mine, the boss over there at USRN, Mr. Matthew Owens. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having us.
How you doing today? Oh, shoot, sorry.
You're good. I am doing well. The best part of my Thursday nights are back when I get to sit on here and ramble about racing with you guys for about an hour. And thank you, everybody that's already getting into the chat. Larry B is there. Taryn also in there on the chat. Hopefully get some more people in there. If you want to talk to us live, hit that iSports Radio chat with your questions or comments. We will read them live on the air. So let's get into it, boys. A lot of previewing we have to do in the next 60 minutes, so we're not going to be before you too long in terms of preamble. But I do want to go around the room. We can start with Michael and just give a quick word about how your off season was since the last time we talked.
My off season was amazing. I got to study new things. I've delved into a bit of music production, and all around it's just been a good time, you know, just learning all types of different skills. How about you guys?
Good. My off season was pretty busy. Obviously, we concluded the year last year with the news that I got promoted at work. So just been learning a new job that I might have been a little underqualified for, but I got it. I'm thriving, and everything's going pretty good.
Do you want me to talk? I don't.
Yeah, I was waiting.
I don't want to, like, I'm new here. I don't want to jump on when I'm not asked to. But yes, well, you know this, Daryl. You know I have no life outside of calling these events on USRN. So yeah, I've had plenty of stuff to keep me busy, football and basketball, and the hockey season is basically a week old, but you know me well enough now, Daryl. I miss getting with you and Seth and Matt White and calling a race, which we're going to be doing here hopefully shortly in the next couple of weeks, but I've missed that enormously.
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit before I join back up with the USRN crew due to obligations I have with my new program that I'm doing to finally wrap up this master's degree, which it's been 2 years and it feels like 20. You guys have probably seen the tweets I've been writing for the Capital News Service. By now, my first article is up talking about the announcement of Governor Hogan's 2022 fiscal year budget. I am putting the finishing touches on a highlights of that budget just to advance the story, of course. And I'll be doing more of that work covering Hogan and the budget and whatever else happens here in Maryland politics. Thankfully, I get to do state level and not federal, because federal kind of well, we've seen it over the last 4 years. But other than that, I've just been patiently counting down the days, obviously, till we get to do this show. And, of course, to one of my favorite races of the season, the Rolex 24, which is coming up next week. And I guess with that being the season coming up, let's talk sports cars. We can start there. And we'll do both the WEC and IMSA. We will start with WEC as they have the most unknowns coming in. Schedule has been shortened from 8 races to 6 races this year. And, of course, they have the new car, the hypercars are calling it. It's being introduced. Toyota is one of the manufacturers running that. Glickenhaus will also be there, but not at the start of the season. Alpine will be running an LMP1 that has been grandfathered in. But, of course, we got Peugeot, Audi, and Porsche coming back starting from next season, either next season or 2 seasons from now, with the LMDH, which is the Le Mans Daytona hypercar little amalgamation that they've done. And, fellas, let's start with you, Mr. Matthew Owens. It's got to be the most exciting time for sports car racing in quite some time when we get to see the top class change, but also the return of Audi and Porsche and a possibility that at least one of those marks, because I believe Audi said they are going to come to Daytona, to see hypercars, the top class of international sports car racing, back on the grid in America after what feels like a decades-long absence.
Yeah, well, of course, names have to, they make things, right? The names of players, the names of drivers, the names of teams, that just has everything to do with the hype of it all. Just like an NBA Finals is always better when it's the Lakers and the Celtics, much better than it would be if it's, say, the Bucks and the Heat. I'm just throwing 2 teams out there, but names make hype, and certainly those 2 names that you put out there makes us all excited. And I think you mentioned it too. The next 2 or 3 years in sports car racing, I think, is going to really mold the way the next 5-10 years of the sport will look. And I think we're in for exciting times. I'm excited for it. But like you said, the names make the hype, and that's what makes it so exciting for us fans.
Michael, I know you're our big sports car aficionado here. How does it feel to finally see? We know why Porsche and Audi fell out. Unfortunately, Dieselgate took a lot of money from their parent company, VW, so they had to stop sports car racing. Now they're out of those fines. There's a more economically feasible way for them to do sports car racing, which unfortunately is what we're going to be hearing a lot now when it comes to racing after the pandemic and everything. How exciting for you is it to finally have the Porsche-Audi rivalry back in sports car racing?
Oh, I'm gonna love it. I just hope there's gonna be no more problems for these guys, and I just can't wait to see what the Harper cars are gonna look like. I was admittedly worried about the Toyota hypercar when we first saw shots of it, because I was just like, it doesn't. I'm sorry, I may offend a few people by saying this, but it just didn't look like a race car. Sometimes it looked like a spaceship. But after seeing how the finished product looks, I am very excited for this new era of hypercars. It looks so cool. And as a fan of LMP1 cars, they are my favorite type of race cars. I am very happy with how the Toyota turned out.
And Christopher, I'm not sure how much you've watched sports car racing, but what are your thoughts on the upcoming season?
Yeah, I don't get into that a whole lot. like supercars and stuff take up a lot of my time. But kind of building off what Michael said when the Toyota renders were coming out, I agree with Michael completely. It looked like a spaceship. It didn't really look like it belonged on a track. It looked like it came out of an Elon Musk warehouse somewhere. But it looks good now, and so I'm pretty excited for the season coming up.
Davidson Crooks just joined us in the chat. Davidson says, what's good? We're doing well, man. I hope you're doing well. We are on if you're just joining us, this is the season preview edition of the Extra Mile here on iSports Radio. While there's one good class, there's also a bad class, and it seems like there's this ebb and flow when it comes to sports car racing, where there's a few years where the prototypes are good, but GT is lagging, and then LMP1 will fall off a cliff in terms of participation, but the GT racing is absolutely fantastic, and we've got like 14 cars in the Le Mans 24, even though they end up changing some of the rules so that a certain two cars can meet, because it's totally not the anniversary of those two competing in the top class. And of course, you didn't nerf one of the American makes to make sure that battle can happen. I'm definitely not salty anyway.
Yeah, you're still salty about that.
We come back to where we get this flow that, and I'll explain why I was talking about that in a minute. Hypercars starting to come up with the main category. GTLM is in the basement and probably in the dirt under the basement. Between both IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Competition and the World Endurance Championship, there are 7 cars, I believe, at count, competing in the entire season for GTLM. We saw that Porsche pulled out, the Porsche factory team pulled out here. BMW is only doing the endurance races. Meanwhile, we had some cars pull out in the WEC with Aston Martin getting ready to ramp up for the Formula One season. So their factory program is gone. They're still doing customer cars, so we'll still see them in GTAM. But fellas, and I'll start with Michael this time, I think the time is upon us for the GTE formula to go away and just for the GT3s to become the new GT Pro and GTAM globally.
Yeah, I mean, I've been thinking about this for a while now, but why not try to incorporate LMP3 into the WEC?
Mm-hmm.
I think it may work. I'm not too entirely sure. I am not a motorsports director, but I think it might work. LMPH, and then you have LMH, and then the P2s, and then you have the P3s, and then you have the GT3 cars at the back. I think that'll work.
We could see, but I think the problem with that, and I'll go to you, Matthew, and then Christopher, if you want to jump in as well after Matthew. Problem with LMP3 is that primarily that we've seen that in the IMSA Prototype Challenge, the IMSA Prototype Challenge and running in Europe, but they usually run like sprint or at the most 4-hour races or 6-hour races. Actually, no, 4-hour races for the European series. We really haven't seen those teams run the big endurance races. In fact, the first one, to my mind, I might be missing some, are going to be next week when they come in for the Rolex 24. So the question to me would be, how many of those teams really want to spend the money, even at the LMP3 level, which is remarkably inexpensive compared to other forms of prototype racing, to run the car for 24 hours like that?
Yeah, and we know over the last handful of years in all forms of motorsport, right? One of the biggest goals is to cut the cost of competition down. And like you said, who wants to spend that money to run 24 hours? That is the biggest question. And I think all of this would have to come down to just trying to save as much money as possible, which, you hate to have something like that come down to finances, but it's a part of the real world, as we know, like you said.
He makes a really good point when you think about it.
Yep. It's gonna be trouble. Well, I'm excited to see the LMP3s next week. My only concern is, are they going to be the new prototype challenge where we have a caution because one of those cars did something dumb? Like, when the prototype challenge class went away, the next year we set a record for the amount of green flag laps in a Rolex 24, and it's like, oh, that's how this race goes when we don't have a class full of underpowered prototypes that break down every 2 hours.
Well, I can already tell you, our good friend Matt White, he was a guest on the Sports Brunch with me one day last week, and he's already said, he's confirmed your beliefs. He believes we're going to have plenty of yellows here in a couple weeks at Daytona because of that class.
Oh, man, if it's that bad, maybe I should retract my statement.
It's going to be... I mean, those races were fun, but I just wish most of those cautions weren't, you look at the PC car and just like, how did you get stuck there? You just roll your eyes. They run out there, try and pull them out the mud or however you get stuck. So we now go into, and we're coming up to the first break, so I just want to get this out. Of course, COVID-19 is going to be an ever-present thing in racing, probably for most of this season, and for a lot of series, the entirety of their season, especially Formula One, which we'll get to. We've already seen Long Beach pushed back, which is why we have this pole award race coming up this week. As the schedule is constructed, do you think that we will get through the full season, or will we have more alterations? Because we've already seen NASCAR have to make changes as far as when they're going to race in California already, and there's a good chance California might get missed 2 weeks in a row, or 2 seasons in a row. So do you think for the remaining races, do you think we're good to go on a pretty much 100% IMSA season?
You want me to cover that? I can lead off on this because I absolutely think there's going to be alterations, to use your words. And I think NASCAR showed everybody how to do it last year, right? They were the first major American sport back. I mean, they were before the NBA, National Hockey League, all of that. And I think they showed every single sport how to do it smartly, how to do it safely, and how to be flexible. And I absolutely think there will be changes to the schedule, probably for all of these racing series. I mean, heck, we haven't even made it. We're not even close to the start of the F1 season, and already we've had Australia moved from the season opener to very deep in the schedule. I absolutely think that we're going to see schedule changes. You've got to be flexible. I think all of us have learned that over the last near calendar year, right? And I think these racing series will be. They need to be if they want to succeed.
Yep. Michael and Christopher, we'll go with you guys, then we'll get into the break.
I'm sorry. What was the question again?
Oh, do you think that we're going to have any changes to the schedule as it's constructed? And I can already pinpoint for you 2 big places where I think we're going to have those issues. Detroit, I don't see that race running. And I'll get into that in Formula One. I don't think any street race really runs this season, just with how much you have to do in the
I don't think any
monetary
street race
expense.
is happening this season. I agree with you.
Yep. So that is... Oh, Christopher, go ahead.
No, I wasn't saying anything, but I agree. I don't see street races happening.
Yeah, so that's going to be the Detroit Grand Prix, June 4th, June 5th. I just don't see that happening. And I'll explain to it because we got to go to break, but I'll explain to that when we come back on why I think that is, at least for any that aren't being held in the fall. But, ladies and gentlemen, it has been a tough year. Many people will say that 2020 was the worst year. And when we left out, I'm pretty sure we all sang as one chorus, I'll try to clean up here, expletive 2020. And not on the low key, on the high key. But it has been a tough year. But Keeping your faith and continuing to work hard is the goal. And if you're in a financial struggle at the moment and you need some help, call 951-732-0130 and our friends at Legacy Financial. They can be reached at 951-732-0130 or 510-928-2104 and book your appointment today. Andrew and Io are just two people on a mission to help families build a legacy. So thank you so much to Legacy Financial for being a sponsor here on IE Sports Radio and making sure great programming like, of course, here at the Extra Mile continue. So we're going to take a break. When we come back, I'll get into my thoughts on why we won't see any street races. And, of course, we will get into the controversy that was things at the end of the Formula One season as we preview the start of the next season. We'll be right back here on the Extra Mile on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hey guys, it's Blake Henley, better known as H-Town Blake to some of you. Happy to announce that Bases Loaded is back in full force. We'll be bringing that high heat every Tuesday night here on IE Sports Radio. So come home, get ready, dig into that batter's box, and see if you can chase that high heat, baby. So we'll be coming to you live with all the stats, all the rundowns, all the division rivalries, and every team that's going to make the playoff push to get to that one and only October and get to the pinnacle of what baseball is, to hoist that Commissioner's Trophy when it's all said and done.
Hey, what's up, sports fans? You're looking for a different type of sports talk show, something you haven't heard before? You gotta check out the BS3 Sports Show every other Saturday on 2 Live Stews Radio, 1 p.m. Central Time, 2 p.m. Eastern. Sports talk at its finest. Always have great guests, playing some good hip-hop. You don't want to miss it. Make sure to tune in to the BS3 Sports Show every other Saturday at 1 p.m. Central Time, 2 p.m. Eastern.
What's good, fight fans? It's your boy, Marcus Los Great, here to give you what you want, here to give you what you need. Yeah, man. Yeah. I'm coming to you live, straight from your mama's basement with a crispy, awesome white tea. We are coming to you live every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Powered by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Welcome back here to the IE Sport, or to the Extra Mile here on IE Sports Radio, rather, your direct feed for all that is sports. Daryl, Michael, Christopher, and Matthew here. We're going to get into our second series, and that's going to be Formula One, and that has been a controversial one for all the wrong reasons. And, of course, before we get into that proper, we do have to acknowledge that there were a series of issues that roiled the F1 community while we were away from the program. One of those, of course, was the announcement that we will be racing in Saudi Arabia for the Saudi Arabia GP. Their human rights record needs no explanation, and this is not the show properly equipped to handle it. I will just preface it by saying it's not well, especially when it comes to dealing with women's rights, which is ironic, given that the W Series is now going to be a sports series for F1. We'll see how that goes. the more I was going to say the more serious, but I think they're equally in the serious, of course, is what Nikita Mazepin did on social media. And this will be the last time we speak about Mazepin on this program. We aren't going to mince words. He videotaped himself on Instagram sexually assaulting a woman. That woman then did put out a statement saying that they were friends, but then quickly retracted that statement and made several comments on social media alluding to Mazepin since then. Mazepin then deleted his apology when it comes to that event. It angered Formula One fans, present company included. Haas decided to take the matter internally, whatever that means. They did not say what punishments, if any, were given. Mazepin does not have a social media presence from what I can tell, but I think, as we can all say, that is wholly insufficient for just the terrible act that he committed. But unfortunately, Nikita Mazepin's father is linked to putting in funding for Haas, and that is where things are. At one point, we were not going to speak about Formula One on this program, but given the time that we have had and with communications, of course, with my co-hosts, we've come to the decision that it wouldn't be fair or our journalistic duty to not cover an entire motorsport based on one person. So what we are going to do, while we acknowledge what has been done, and we certainly do not agree with what happened, we will discuss Formula One. We are going to discuss Formula One here and now. The one mention of the second Haas driver on this program at the beginning of this statement will be the last time you hear that name on this program. I think that is how we will keep it, and that is how we will delegate business. So, with that being said, let's get into business, fellas, and we're going to start right at the top with Lewis Hamilton. He won the seventh championship, and our listeners are probably wondering, well, why you're talking about him? He's obviously going to win the eighth. Well, there's a problem with that. Lewis currently doesn't have a contract with Mercedes. It is January 21st. The season starts in March, and they have yet to agree on the terms of a new contract. So, if Lewis is not here, that changes things a bit in the championship standings. So we'll start there. And we started with Matthew first time to lead off. We will start with Christopher this time. Is Lewis Hamilton going to be on the grid?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so Sir Lewis Hamilton.
Oh, yeah, Sir Lewis Hamilton. Excuse me. Where's my professionalism? He was knighted over this offseason, so Sir Lewis Hamilton. Sorry about that.
Correct. We have to have our titles right.
Yep.
I don't see it happening. I don't think he's coming back. He doesn't really have any incentive to. And I think this is just purely speculation, so don't really, take it with a grain of salt, I guess. But I think that he's probably rather unhappy with the F1 authority over the differences in disciplinary actions between him and said unnamed Haas driver.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see him coming back. I think it's going to be Russell's turn.
It's a free practice track, so anyone who wants to jump in, of course, can jump in at any time. Just wanted to put that out there.
Well, I think I'll say this about Lewis, and I can totally understand where people come from by saying he has nothing else to prove, because he's won the 7 championships, he's won, a million races, he's overtaken Michael in race wins. But I still think there is a little bit to prove, to the point of and this goes on in every form of motorsport, but there's always the debate of, are we sure he's the greatest? Okay, sure, he's got more wins, but, he hasn't had as, deep of competition, as deep of grids as Michael had to go through, and his car was this much better, and there's all of this, that, and there's everything that people can throw at him on Twitter. Well, wouldn't the one thing to quiet all of those doubters, which, by the way, I'm one of them, wouldn't the best way to quiet all of those people would go out and win this 8th championship? What would it be? It would be his 5th in a row. It would be his 6th it'd be his 7th in 8 years. He would pass Michael in world championships. Wouldn't that be the greatest way to silence all the doubters and shut me up? I'm sure he's totally enamored with shutting this guy up, but I mean that would be the best way to do it. So I think there's a little bit there still to be proved, at the very least by him. We know athletes always want to try to prove all their doubters wrong, but I think that your point is well taken too. That I think he is frustrated and aggravated with the powers that be. And if that's enough to cause him to call it quits, then okay. But to the point that I was making to conclude on that, I think if he goes out, all he needs is one more title. He gets number 8. He can drop the mic then, right? Say, okay, I've done everything I can do to gain your respect for the GOAT status. And if you still can't give it to me, then all you're doing is hating at this point.
Yeah, I think either way this season is either way. I don't think we're seeing him after this season, because after that 8 championships, you're done. You're the GOAT. See ya. I'm sorry, Michael, I cut you off, and I'm gonna let you continue. The one thing I will say, there is a lot that he has to be cheesed off about when it comes to Formula One management. You're exactly right, Matthew. Michael, go ahead.
Well, the thing about it is, I think if he wants to retire, now would be the time, because the issue is that contract, I've heard that it's not a 1-year deal, it's a multi-year deal. Mm-hmm. And the problem with that is he's like, okay, yeah, I'm back in Formula One, but I'm going to be able to dominate this sport for like the next 2 years or whatever. And then there's the whole issue of the new car, and then, he has other things he wants to work on. He has his music career. He has, maybe his fashion brand. He's tackling world issues. He hasn't his own racing team. So I think the most realistic expectation is he retires, because he has a lot more stuff to worry about now, and he's trying to, tackle some of these things on his plate, and F1 is just one big, knob in the middle. So I think this year he's gonna call it quits, because I just don't see him doing another year, because the contract is a lot. Like, he's asking for a ton of money.
Yeah, I saw that contract, and it's like $40 million and ownership stake and 10% of winnings. That's the contract of, I don't really want to come back, but if you want to drag me back, this is what it's going to take. It really
and an
feels...
AMG one, by the way.
Yeah, it really... Wait, what was that last one?
And an AMG one.
Yeah, and of course a car, but I'm pretty sure you can get that anyway. But it really feels like he's like, I don't really want to come back, but if y'all really want to put me in this car, look, this is what I want. Take it or leave it. And
here's one last thing I would add to that too, is when George got into that car, when Lewis missed that race in Bahrain because of a positive COVID test, there were a lot of people, and again, I'll include myself on this, saying, now we're really going to find out, right? Is Lewis just better than everyone else, or is the car better than all the other cars? And George went out there, he dominated that race, he was going to win, and then Mercedes threw it away in a way that Mercedes never does. And that led to the people like me and everyone else saying, see, Okay, George Russell, who's never come close to a podium, was going to win because he was in the superior car. I still think there's doubt in a lot of people's minds if Lewis Hamilton is the greatest of all time. And if he wants to put that to bed, go out and win this title.
Yep.
Go out and win that title in a Williams racing car.
You'll be that is physically impossible. But
I don't think Senna in his prime couldn't bring that car to a win. He couldn't bring that car to a podium. Okay, that car is really bad.
But the thing about it is, I think, you know, if it's to come back for one season, I think that's just feeding his own ego. It's just like, oh, people still don't doubt me. Let me win this last championship. And then it's out. And then the thing about it is Mercedes still wants either, you know, multi-year or you're out. And it's just like they can't really come to a compromise of, hey, you come back for this year and then it's out. And I think Russell would, you know, honestly be the better pick because, yeah, you know, I don't know if Whit Russ is going to win the championship or not because it's just, you know, it's Bottas and more experience and everything like that, and he's capable of winning. And then maybe if Hamilton leaves, they can let Bottas off his leash.
Yeah.
But, and plus, you wouldn't have to pay you wouldn't have to pay Russell half as much as you pay Hamilton. Because Russell doesn't have in the F1 2020 game, it's called acclaim. He doesn't have as much acclaim as Hamilton does.
Yeah, so there's a lot. There's a lot.
It's a win-win scenario if you sign Russell. He's capable. You've seen it, and you don't have to pay him a lot. So,
yeah, and we'll see what happens. Hopefully, we'll have Hamilton on the grid. After that, who knows? It may come down to being Russell's championship to win, to lose, but. We'll see, but we got a lot of faces in new places, and I'll put it just in the interest of time, I'll just throw it out. Who do you think of the drivers that have switched cars, and I'll give you a quick preview. We know Daniel Ricciardo's moved over to McLaren. We've had, unfortunately, Alexander Albon is gone. Perez is now with Ferrari. Vettel is now over in Aston Martin.
Ferrari.
Not Perez.
Red Bull.
Red Bull. Sainz is one of the McLaren drivers.
Sainz is in Ferrari.
Yeah, thank you. Sainz is in Ferrari. Sorry, I'm looking at an old list because they don't have the new one up on Formula One, unfortunately. So we've got all these drivers that have moved around. Of course, Sebastian Vettel's at Aston Martin. Of the drivers that have moved car, who do you think is going to do the best?
I'll go first. Ricciardo, hands down. Ricciardo and McLaren. They have everything they need to make this one of their best F1 seasons in a long time. They have the Mercedes power unit. They have a bunch of new people coming in. They have a bunch of new sponsors coming in. They have everything on the table, and I honestly. Like, I know a lot of the news is pointing towards Aston Martin. I'm sorry. I know a lot of the hype is pointing towards them, but I think McLaren should definitely be the team to look out for, and Ricciardo, because they have such a good history of doing this, and also they, like I said, they have the power unit back, and golf sponsorship, and Ricciardo. And I think Ricciardo and Norris are going to just be a fantastic duo to look out for. We know Norris is capable, maybe not of winning, but racing really well. And Ricciardo, we know he's capable of winning. I think that's one of the best combinations this season.
Yeah, just to save time so you don't have to hear from this idiot again. Yeah, I agree. I completely agree on that. We know Ricciardo is a world-class driver. Now he's in, okay, is it world-class equipment? We can debate that if you wanted to, but he's in good equipment. And it's a terrific driver. So, yeah, totally agree.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm going to third on that one as well. And you don't have to hear me babble the reasons why either.
I think I'm just going to make it a clean sweep. I think Ricciardo is going to be a podium threat in that car. He finally, for the first time since his Red Bull days, has a car there he can really compete in. We'll also be watching what Aston Martin decides to do, or what Aston Martin can do. Could be a lot of questions about Lance Stroll's ability. Can he beat a fading Sebastian Vettel in the qualifying and race standings? The biggest metric. How do you beat your teammate, your biggest rival? That is going to be a talking point all year long. And, of course, in Formula One, more than anywhere else, COVID-19 is going to be an issue because they jump from country to country to country. So we know they're going to have issues. It's already started, actually. China has been asked to push back later in the season. I believe they have pushed it back later in the season. I'm looking at the schedule right now. I do not see China currently on here, so they're going to have to figure that out. Because I know China wants to get pushed back to later in the season. We've already lost Australia. Actually, yeah, it's the to-be-determined track here. We've already lost Australia. They've pushed back to November. So we're going to be Italy, and then there's another track we have to fill in there. We're going to have a little bit of a long break before we go to Spain. And then we've got a bunch of street courses. Monaco, Azerbaijan, Canada. We go to Singapore later on in the season. Russia is technically a street circuit, but we're not going to get into that. Mexico is in a park, so that counts. All those races I named, I do not see them happening. And, of course, Australia got moved back to November. Australia might be the only one that happens. But I'll even say Mexico because that's in October. Just with everything that has to be done with the COVID-19 vaccine and getting that into everyone's arms and making sure that cases are coming down, you cannot go to your city or your state government, depending on the country, and say, we're going to spend all this money to put all these barriers up, to have this race, and try to bring these people together. You're going to get bombarded with angry reacts on social media. So I just do not believe we're going to see a lot of street racing, of course, in Formula One and in really any other series, which puts a series like Formula E kind of in jeopardy of missing a second year. But we will obviously see what happens. But we are going to take a quick break, and we're going to hear from a good friend of ours, Matt White, with his thoughts on what we're going to see in 2021, and then we'll come right back to talk about IndyCar and NASCAR to wrap up the show. We'll be right back here on the Extra Mile on iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hi guys, Matt White here. You may remember me from such iSports radio shows as The Extra Mile, Two Wheels Wednesday and The Defining Moment. I'm back to give you my 2021 predictions and things to watch out for mostly. Couple of predictions. Let's start with NASCAR. I think Zane Smith will take the Truck Series Championship this year. Noah Gragson will win in Xfinity, and Kevin Harvick, after his strong 2020, will back that up with a championship in 2021. In IndyCar, I think that Scott Dixon will finally get another Indy 500 victory, but Joseph Newgarden will pip him to the championship. In a prediction that might shock members of the team on this show, I think Mazda will win the DPI Championship in IMSA, which kicks off, of course, this weekend with the Rolex 24, and you can listen to extended coverage on the USRN network of channels over the weekend. A couple of things to look out for this year. I think that the Repco Supercars Championship down in Australia is going to be something special. No Scott McLaughlin, of course, he's an IndyCar, but Jamie Whincup, I think, is going to reaffirm his position as the leader in that championship and take another title. IMSA is going to be brilliant this season. There's absolutely so many storylines across that championship to look out for. WEC enters a new era with its new hypercar program. Of course, Toyota will be top dog in that and probably win Le Mans as well. And some great stuff around the motorsport world, of course, as always. Of course, Lewis Hamilton will win the Formula One World Championship and to get an 8th title and become the greatest of all time without any question, shadow or doubt at all. Quick plug, Don't forget, the Grid World Motorsport League continues into its third season in 2021. Lewis was pipped at the post at the very, very end of last year by European Le Mans Series champion Phil Hansen to the 2020 championship. But it starts this weekend with that IMSA pole race, and then the 24, and the World Rally Championship starts this weekend with the Monte Carlo Rally, which has already started today. So lots to look out for. Look us up on Twitter. That's grid_WML for the World Motorsport League. Updates and bits and pieces on there throughout the season.
Thank you so much, Matthew White, and congratulations during the off season. Matthew and his gorgeous family moved into a new place. So congratulations. I hope you guys are doing well. I know COVID has been particularly challenging in Great Britain, and we, of course, are praying for your continued health for you, the wife, and the baby, who definitely is the most adorable one of all of you. Anyway, because we care. But, no, seriously, we hope you're doing well, Matt. We're back here in the Extra Mile, and we're going to talk IndyCar, NASCAR to wrap up the show. We can start with IndyCar, as there was some shocking news that Marco Andretti is calling it a career as far as full-time IndyCar racing is concerned. He doesn't want to go off and do sports cars and other type of racing now. And Michael, I'll go to you first. This seems long overdue. Marco just could not get it done in IndyCar. And I want to be, objective, but you look at his statistics, taking out who his family is, it just never clicked for Marco.
Yeah, it just never clicked, and that's kind of the reality of sports nowadays. What might click for one driver, what might not click for one driver, might click for another series. So I think he'll do well in other series because, F1 and, even in IndyCar sometimes. Yes. It might not be for a driver, but another series might be for another series. So I look forward to seeing what else he can do in sports cars or whatever else he, branches out towards.
Is it just me, or, and I'm going a long way back here, 15 years, but is it just me, or did he never recover from Hornish beating him out in the third closest margin of victory ever in the Indianapolis 500?
No, he did not, and I think that is the turning point for his career, in my opinion.
He's got that race won. He's got a very sizable lead at the white flag, and then Hornish, I don't know what Hornish did to that car to make him get through turns 3 and 4 the way he did. He gets him right at the line, and I just don't think Marco could ever recover from that. And that's kind of sad to say because he had 15 years to try to get past that. But anytime we think of Marco Andretti, that's what we think of. Sam Hornish beating him at the Yard of Bricks at Indianapolis in 2006.
And Christopher, losing a race that big, the Indianapolis 500, I'm not going to get into it because Matthew Owens could tell the story better and it would probably take a lot more time. But losing a race of that magnitude, that's really got to shake your confidence. And it really feels like Marco just couldn't get from under that.
Yeah. Like you guys had kind of already said, it was definitely a turning point for him. And when it comes to professional sports, it doesn't matter what sport it is, you have to mentally overcome that type of stuff, or you're going to find yourself out of a job pretty quick. And, he didn't quite find himself out of a job, but he has definitely not mentally recovered from that. And it'll be interesting to see what he does, when he has the opportunity to do some different things, get into some different disciplines, a car, and, it'll just be interesting to watch what he does going forward.
Yep, and we will definitely be interested in that career. We know Andretti Autosports got their hands in a lot of pies when it comes to racing, or at least at one point they did. So we'll see him racing somewhere else. But one guy that we will see, of course, a couple of guys that we will see on the schedule, actually, One's going to be Scott Dixon, who at this point is, much like Lewis Hamilton, is starting to run down the amount of records he can break before he gets acknowledged the GOAT. And, of course, you've got that Penske, I was going to say duo, but it's more like a trio or a quartet with the amount of cars they've got. But you got Joseph Newgarden and, of course, Will Power, Simon Pagenaud, all championship contenders, want to get back to the winning ways. And Alexander Rossi had that's the worst season I've seen a driver have since Jeff Gordon 2008. Like, honestly, that is the worst season I've ever seen a championship contender have since that season. Did you have to bring that up? I mean, for the sake of clarity, myself and Matthew Owens, both big Jeff Gordon fans, we both suffered during that season.
Oh, jeez.
And Alexander Rossi, anything that could go wrong did go wrong that season. And Matthew, the perfect microcosm of the year, end of the season, St. Pete, we were doing it on USRN. He dominates most of that race. He goes into turn 3, gets an inch out of the groove, a literal inch, and he's into the outside wall. That was Alexander Rossi's season in 2020.
And see, that's why I think he's going to have a really good 2021, because I hate to use the L word. I never like using it, but it was just a bunch of luck that didn't go his way. He just had pure bad racing luck. Yep. Through the entire season. You can go back to the Indianapolis 500 where he had a pit road penalty that put him in dirty air and hit the wall. But it wasn't just the 500. It was basically every other race. He just had bad racing luck after coming so close to the title, of course, in 2019. That's why I think he's going to have a bounce back 2021, if for any other reason, because the law of averages say you can't have that much bad luck again in a second year, straight year. And when Alexander Rossi is on level terms with everyone else, with none of this bizarre stuff going on, he's as good as anyone. So yes. I think it's going to be a big bounce back 2021 for Mr. Rossi.
I mean, Michael, the only direction he can go is up, right? Like, it can't get worse than what we've seen.
Honestly, some drivers do have their down seasons where things really don't go their way before they start to get better the next season and they push. So I think this is going to be a big season for Rossi.
Yeah. I hope it does well. And, of course, COVID-19, we'll have to see how the schedule goes. If there's any juggling, we've already seen that with St. Pete. And St. Pete now becoming it's always been the start of the race. Sorry, where am I going? St. Pete, of course, been moved back to tighten up the schedule. Actually, no, Barber is now the start of the schedule. St. Pete got moved back to April 25th to fill in the spot that was the streets of Long Beach, that is now the end of the season because, of course, California has really locked down when it comes to COVID-19. But that's just because, unfortunately, it's really dug into COVID-19, dug into Southern California, where, of course, Long Beach is. And, of course, we got that new race in Nashville. I really think that race might not happen either. And wouldn't that just be a shame?
Oh my gosh, it really would. Yeah. I think everybody's looking forward to that, having a race in Nashville. NASCAR's going to the Nashville Super Speedway. There's talks about getting the fairgrounds back. I know Tony Stewart's racing series is going to the fairgrounds. Nashville is becoming a hotbed all of a sudden. It would really suck to not see that. By the way, can I express my displeasure with not having Iowa on the IndyCar schedule?
Iowa, Chicagoland, Kentucky. We got to get more ovals back on this schedule when it comes to IndyCar. And, of course, we did mention NASCAR, folks. Way too much happened in NASCAR for us to only give you about 10 minutes of that conversation, even if we overrun. So we're going to have obviously, we're going to be back next week. We're going to continue into the previews because we have the Rolex 24 coming up. Part 2 of this preview show, which will include NASCAR, will be next week. Matthew Owens, of course, if you want to join us, door is always open for you. But I do not want to shortchange all of the news in NASCAR because there's a lot when it comes to the guys that go left for several hours, which we love. But continuing with IndyCar, they're going to have schedule changes. I do not know if the streets of Toronto is going to take place. Florida, well, look, we know how Florida has been with COVID-19. We're not going to get into that. Wrong show for that. I would just say I disagree with some of the choices they've made. Canada's about crossing the border, and we don't know when the border is going to open. So who knows with that race. Detroit, same thing I said during IMSA or during Formula One. How do you go to your city council and tell them, yes, we're struggling under the strain of COVID-19, but hey, let's go have this race and spend hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to put this together, and hopefully nobody will get sick if we even bring 1% fans or whatever. So we'll see when it comes to the street races. It's a lot, but fellas, this is going to be a really fun season.
Yeah, it is. By the way, I have a resolution. Go to Iowa. Go to Iowa. Go to Richmond. Go to Fontana. That's your resolution. But anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, it's going to be an amazing year.
Yeah, cannot wait. Fellas, thank you so much for joining me. Before we close out and give final thoughts, Seth Eves, who many of who listen to USRA and iSports Radio know well, of course, had to give his thoughts on the 2021 racing season. Seth, I want to say, cannot wait to get on with you again to call some races. And if I can find where I put it on this list, I can play. There it is. So we're going to hear what Seth has to say about the coming season, and then we'll give our final thoughts.
Hey everybody, Seth East from USRN. Happy for the invite from the Extra Mile to share my upcoming thoughts on the 2021 motorsports season. From the 1,000-foot view, I think motorsports in general has a lot of positive momentum riding around both on and off the track because motorsports became a really popular thing when it was one of the few, if not only, things on in the middle of the at the height of the coronavirus pandemic. So I think there's a lot going on there. In NASCAR, I think it's reminded me of the closest we've been to the boom time of the 90s in quite a while, with all the people. We got Michael Jordan and Pitbull among those that are owning teams now. I mean, it's just fantastic. I expect a fun year. As always, I like seeing the new drivers with new teams. I'm curious to see how they'll work out. And, of course, a brand new schedule. How many tracks we go to this year that we've never been to, it seems. So looking forward to that. Obviously, all eyes are on Chase Elliott. He's won his championship. Now, can he repeat? He's going to have a big laundry list of challengers, that's for sure. Denny Hamlin, I think, is going to be very much in the mix yet again as he continues to be oh so close to that elusive championship. How does Kevin Harvick go about his business in 2021 after having one of the arguably maybe the best season in the history of the sport that didn't result in a championship after what happened to him at Martinsville last season? And then, of course, the story I think most everybody's going to be paying attention to in NASCAR circles, what to make of Kyle Larson. I personally think that Kyle Larson returning to Hendrick Motorsports is going to be a big deal. I think he's going to be a contender. How much of a contender? I'll go ahead and let you in on a little secret. I think he's one of two Hendrick drivers that make the Final Four. I think Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, Kevin Harvick, and Joey Logano make your championship four. And I think we will see Harvick with the all-time redemption story. I think he bounces back. He and Roddy Childers bounce back for 2021. And also, pretty good rookie class. I say Chase Briscoe wins a race this season. And my ultimate, I don't even know if you can call it really a bold prediction, but I say Austin Cindric steals a victory at one of the road course races this season. So I'm very much looking forward to that. Of course, he's running a limited Cup Series schedule on the road courses before heading to Cup full-time next season. I think Cindric will win one of those said races. Over on the IndyCar side, that sport just continues to grow. Of course, all eyes there are going to be on Jimmy Johnson running a part-time schedule on the road courses. Scott Dixon, he's the man. He is the greatest of his generation. And the big story here is, can he win another championship? That remains to be seen. You look all around the place. Obviously, A.J. Foyt will try to, that team will try to revive itself with Kellett and Bourdais. But, man, just so many good storylines all the way around. I'm curious to see the Arrow McLaren's award, and now Rosenquist moves in to that car in lieu of Oliver Askew there. And, of course, you can't go against Ping Penske. Scott McLaughlin, watching him run is going to be absolutely phenomenal this season. A lot of good drivers and teams on the IndyCar side as always. But I think we continue this little back and forth game. I think this year the balance of power shifts back to the man from Tennessee. I'm going to go with Joseph Newgarden to reclaim his throne on the IndyCar side of things. But I am curious to see all these other races and who else will step up and who could be a surprise in this IndyCar season. And then, of course, on the Formula One side, I do expect more of the same on that end. I just think Mercedes just too untouchable. But some of the new guns could be interesting to watch there. Of course, there's team changes there in F1. Does the move for Sebastian Vettel revive his career? I don't know. I really don't. Ferrari's such a mess, but at the same time, you just wonder if you watch him, if he lost a little bit of his, gusto over the last few years. So that'll be interesting. Obviously, you get Fernando Alonso with the new Alpine Renault team. But I think the star to watch this season, the guy to watch who could maybe be in that top 3 or 4 in the championship race, I think you watch out for 2 guys, actually. One, Daniel Ricciardo in a much improved McLaren. I think he and Lando Norris are going to be a dynamite team. And then Sergio Perez moving over, who had that win at the end of last season. Now he moves over to Red Bull to partner with Max Verstappen. I think that could be quite a duo as well. And also, listen, you can say what you want to about his teammate, but it's going to be fun to see a Schumacher running in Formula One again with Mick now carrying that flag. So that will be interesting to watch. And then finally, over on the IMSA side of things, the 24 Hours of Daytona is coming up in just a little bit. And about a week or so, a couple weeks away. And IMSA, in terms of running full-time, that series just continues to get better and better. It seems like you get more stacked drivers running full-time for that each season long. IMSA is always just such a fun series to watch, and we'll see. Don't know if I can make a pick for championship-wise, but I do believe you will see a lot of hard-hitting, a lot of great action all season long. I'm looking forward to all the racing this season, and looking forward to you guys being back on the Extra Mile. It's good to have you guys back on, and I appreciate you letting me share a few minutes of thoughts with you. So I am Seth Eves, and that'll do it for now.
Thank you to Seth Eves and Matt White for giving us those broadcasts, or giving us their thoughts on the 2021 racing season. Seth, can't wait to get back with you on the old racing calls later on this season. And I will say that this was a lot of fun, fellas. I appreciate coming back and shaking off some of the ice, or I would say ice, but it's been a bit mild of a winter up here in D.C., but getting ready, getting back into the swing of things, and next week we'll be going twice around the clock for the Rolex 24.
Can't wait.
Yep.
Can't wait. Also, I'm really glad I'm having another season with you guys.
Same here.
Yep, first full season for me. I'm looking forward to it, so it'll be fun.
Yep. And I get to attempt to defend my Nearest the Win championship from last season. First time I am the hunted in this competition. And if you want to join us for Nearest the Win, we do it for IndyCar, NASCAR, and yes, of course, Formula One. If you pick the winner, you get 2 points. If nobody picks the winner, the driver, I think it's the driver that finishes highest, gets 1 point. And if your driver doesn't win, you don't get anything. So it keeps it close. It's a lot of fun, especially when the IE Sports Radio curse starts coming in about mid-season. Christopher's going to get to learn about that. That's going to be a lot of fun. But, fellas, thank you so much for joining us. We have some great programming here on IE Sports Radio. Check out the website, iesportsradio.com. And, hey, if you want to be a sponsor here on IE Sports Radio, like our good friends over at Legacy Financial, head over to Ko-Fi.com. We've got sponsorship packages for a week, a month, and more. Head over there and check that out. And, of course, check out the IE Sports Radio social media pages on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I want to thank my co-host, Christopher Lehman, and Michael Ward for joining me. Thank you so much for Matthew Owens for joining us. He'll be back next week to help us preview everything in NASCAR. This has been the Extra Mile, and we will see you at the next green flag. Good night, everybody.